Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, also known as Major Green, and today I want to talk about a funny topic, and this is purely for fun, for speculation. And the question I want to debate is this, don't the whales still need saving in the Kelvin timeline? And first of all, let me explain what is the Kelvin timeline. So we had the prime timeline of Star Trek, all the old shows, and then the JJ movies came along and destroyed the USS Kelvin, which created a brand new timeline. And according to the producers, all the old Star Trek shows still exist in a separate timeline. Now, my problem with that movie originally was because time travel doesn't work like that. It doesn't just create a brand new timeline, it always affected the original timeline, the timeline that the time traveler came from. That's why they always had to fix the mess that they did in the past. They couldn't just leave it. They always had to fix it to restore the timeline. This was the plot in multiple episodes of Star Trek. They always had to go back in time and fix whatever went wrong to restore the original timeline. It was never said that it becomes a separate timeline and the old one still exists. It seemed to follow like kind of the Back to the Future logic of time traveling, meaning things you do in the past affect you yourself as well. Maybe not immediately, it takes a while for the changes to ripple through time or whatever, so we can discuss the logic of all of that, but that was the way it was done in all the old Star Trek shows. And that was the driving force of the plot. That's why they always had to fix the timeline. And it wasn't just because the character wanted to get back to where he came from, but he wanted to fix the timeline for the benefit of everybody. So when the JJ movie said that, oh no, this is all a brand new timeline, but the old one still exists, don't worry. It was obviously kind of an excuse to calm down all the angry fans, because if it's a new timeline, then according to the old Star Trek time travel rules, that means the original timeline got erased. So all the events in all the shows that we loved, they all didn't happen, or didn't happen how we saw them. So that was extremely annoying to hardcore Star Trek fans, and so I think that's why they said it's a new timeline which doesn't affect the prime timeline. That was basically a way not to get the fans angry. And I remember I said even back then that my biggest problem with the JJ movies is that this is basically a reboot, and that means we'll never go back to the prime timeline. And just as I suspected, the next show was again a prequel, and it seems to be very similar to the JJ style. And even though they're claiming it's in the prime timeline, it doesn't really make sense. They're much more similar to the JJ one, and so that was my biggest problem with the JJ movies. I did enjoy those movies in many ways, but my biggest problem is that they're kind of destroying the old Star Trek universe. However, if I kind of go out of the Star Trek universe and look at it objectively, I do think the idea of a new timeline does make more sense logically, and also in terms of actual science, what we know of today. If we look at things like quantum mechanics and probability and all of those things, I think logically it does make sense that time travel would actually result in an alternate timeline in another universe and not changing the original timeline. So in that sense, I kind of like that idea better. And even in the Star Trek universe itself, we did see a bunch of episodes about parallel universes, other universes, which were not shown to be a result of time travel, but I can kind of accept the idea that under certain conditions, time travel can result in not changing the original timeline, but creating a separate one in a separate universe. Maybe we can say the time traveler actually ended up in a parallel universe from the get-go, and so whatever changes he did in the past don't really affect his original timeline. Instead, it only changes that other universe he arrived at, or maybe it creates a brand new universe even. In some ways, it makes more sense logically if we think about time travel. It makes more sense this way, because, you won't disappear if you kill your own father, for example. In the old Star Trek rules, if you went back in time and killed your ancestors, then you should disappear yourself. But if you do disappear, then who killed them? And so it doesn't make sense in many ways. But the idea of creating a brand new timeline which is disconnected, which is like a separate universe, it makes more sense, because then you don't have to disappear. You're basically from another universe, and so nothing you do in the past will really affect you yourself. However, we cannot say that that always happens, because then all those episodes in Star Trek with time travel in which they have to go back and fix it wouldn't make sense. And also they showed us that there is a temporal police in the future. They actually have time ships and the temporal agents who actually guard the timeline, who prevent changes in the past. And so why would they be bothering to do all of that if it really doesn't affect them? If anyone who goes back in time only creates a different timeline, and it won't really affect them, so why would they try to guard it? And so I think the best way to reconcile all of this is simply to say that sometimes it creates a new timeline, which is separate in a separate universe, which doesn't affect the original, but a lot of times it does affect the original. and that's why they do have the temporal police and all that stuff, but it can also explain why they sometimes don't intervene. Like sometimes we don't see any of them do anything, we see only the characters of the show do something. So maybe it's because in that case they think it won't affect them in the future. Maybe because they knew the Enterprise crew will handle it on itself, so that's why they didn't send any help. So I think the best way to explain all of this mess is simply to say that only sometimes it creates a brand new timeline which doesn't affect the original. And that's what apparently happened with the Kelvin timeline, in which the USS Kelvin was destroyed by a Nero from the future, and then Captain Kirk was prematurely born on that shuttle, I guess, because he was supposed to be born on Earth in the original timeline, and his father died, and so his life was different, and all of that led to the events of that movie. And somehow by destiny, I guess, all the same people ended up on the Enterprise still. And now I want to finally get to the topic of the video, the question I asked, don't the worlds still need saving? Because in the original timeline, Captain Kirk and his crew had to actually go back in time to the 20th century to take a couple of worlds and take them to the future because an alien probe started destroying the planet, I guess to terraform it or something, because it couldn't find any wells on the planet and it only wanted to make contact with the wells. I guess maybe it was an automated probe which was programmed very specifically, and so it wasn't actually intelligent. It was basically a machine, and so once it couldn't make contact with the wells, it assumed there is no intelligent life on the planet, and I guess it started to terraform the planet to be more fitted with marine life, I guess. So that plot point was kind of stupid, but let's assume that was just an automated probe, which was just programmed to make contact with the whales. So Captain Kirk's only solution was to go back in time to before the whales went extinct and to take two whales into the future to show that probe, here are the whales, so that it can leave the planet. Which did work, and that's how he saved the planet. And also save the species of whales from extinction, because presumably in the future no one would hunt them and they'll be able to prosper, they'll be able to reproduce, I guess with incest, to restore their species. But what happened in the Kelvin timeline? Since it's a separate timeline, that means that at a certain point in the future of that timeline, that same probe should still appear and once again be looking for whales, and once again it won't find them, because the path should be the same in both of these timelines. The timelines only diverged into two in the moment that Nero came back to the past. Before that, this was supposedly the same exact timeline, so that means the whales went extinct, and once that probe arrives again in the future of the Kelvin timeline, then again it won't find the whales, and again someone would have to get some whales to it. And so maybe Chris Pine will also have to go back into the past also to look for whales and again to take them to the future. And so theoretically it's possible that once he goes back in time he might meet the Shatner Kirk, because if they go back to the same place and time, to San Francisco in the 80s, then both of the teams from the two different timelines might be walking in the same place. And even if they don't go to the same exact place or time, that still means that Chris Pine will have to kidnap some whales and take them to the future. Which also creates a whole new question for debate. How exactly did the whales go extinct? Because we always assumed it was because of humanity hunting them and killing them off, but what if they actually went extinct because multiple different Captain Kirks from different timelines kept going back to the past and kidnapping a bunch of whales and taking them to the future? Maybe that's actually what caused the extinction. I mean, if there's one alternate timeline which shares the same past, maybe there are more. Maybe there are multiple such timelines which split off at certain points, but they all share the same past, and so it's possible that many alternate Captain Kirks from alternate timelines all keep coming back to the same original timeline in the past, and they all keep taking whales to the future, and that means the whale population in the past keeps getting smaller and smaller, and maybe that's why they went extinct, not because of the hunting by humans. Maybe it's because of all the multiple Captain Kirks who will all have the brilliant idea of kidnapping whales from the past to take them to the future, so maybe that's why the whales went extinct. Wouldn't that be ironic that it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, like a time loop of sorts? And so this, I think, is a very funny possibility. Maybe 10,000 Captain Kirks went back in time to different points in history, and they all took two whales to the future, to their timeline, until in the past no whales remained, and so that's why the whales went extinct. So this is all my theory, of course. This is purely for fun, purely speculation. I think this is a funny idea. I doubt it will ever be done in any kind of movie or show, but maybe in the animated show they can do that. It's supposed to be a comedy show. I think they took the same writers from Rick and Morty, and those writers love to do all kinds of stories about parallel universes and stuff like that. So maybe they could write a story like that. Like, imagine how funny that would be. They could still get Shatner to voice the original Kirk, and they could get Chris Pine to record a few lines, and they could meet each other in the past and ask each other what are you doing them, and each of them will say, I'm looking for a bunch of whales. And maybe they can meet other Kirks from different alternate timelines, and they're all looking for whales, and they're all kidnapping whales from the past to take to the future until there are no whales left. But at least in the future, in all of those timelines, the whales will still exist, although they'll all have to do incest, I guess. So anyway, I just thought it's a funny idea, and so I wanted to share it in a video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we can discuss it. Let me know if you liked the video, if you want me to make more videos like this. I hope so, because I have a lot of fun making up stuff like this, so let me know if you want more, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.